Well, good evening and good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. It's evening in the UK and morning in California. And where you are, it could be something completely different. But a warm welcome, whatever the time of day is for you, to the next in Conversation with Healers. And for today's event, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome a lady who I've done work with, the Sanctuary's done quite a bit of work with, and with her husband as well through Healing in America, Kim Vincent. Kim, a very warm welcome. I'm going to give you a bit of background about Kim. She's quite an impressive lady. So get your cup of tea ready and your comfy seat, and here we go. So Kim Vincent is a change facilitator, trainer, and healer. What a wonderful combination. Living a life defined by passionate self-expression and authentic joy is something Kim Vincent not only trains others to do, but fully embraces herself. Kim has proven change does not need to be slow, difficult, or painful. And we've actually seen that in some of our events already, haven't we? Where people have had quite seismic changes within the hour and a half we've been on. Rather, changes happen by a process that Kim has developed through years of working with thousands of people and adapting proven methods of change, such as NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, and energy healing. I said to one of our other guests, Kim, I've never been hypnotized as far as I'm aware, so I hope you're not going to do that to me this evening. Because I'm
not this evening, Alison, but it does sound like fun in the future.
I should be aware I was under hypnosis. The result is a delightful, simple, and immediate process of change that is so effective that it feels magical. Yes, we'll have plenty of that, please. In 2002, Kim moved from Great Britain, where she had been teaching at universities, colleges, and holistic centres throughout the United Kingdom and Europe. Her move to Ojai, California was an intentional shift to bring her transforming work to the United States. I think I'm saying Ojai better these days as well.
Yes, you are. I'm very impressed, Alison.
She founded Changes Happen in 2008, an organisation designed to illuminate, awaken, and inspire inner freedom, joy, and peace for those who are ready to tap into their true potential and leave the limitations of past programming behind. Her training and coaching programs are refreshing, simple, and yet profound in a powerful way. These workshops teach individuals how to break through the dark outer crust of self-limitation, fear, and past programming, thereby connecting individuals to their true power and limitless potential. Kim is CEO and co-founder of Healing in America, a non-profit organization running accredited energy healing programs throughout America, and she has also appeared on UK and US television. She is a regular speaker at exhibitions and Conscious Life expos and has a large private practice. British media have applauded Kim's work, and Marie Claire magazine recommended Kim's guided meditation and healing CD entitled A Journey Within, which is among the best-selling CDs of its type. Her second CD, Take a Deep Breath Now, is designed to help eliminate stress. Any encounter with Kim through her workshops, media, or private sessions results in predictably infectious sense of joy and possibility. Wow.
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 Oh my goodness, that does sound a bit...
Remarkable lady. I'm so looking forward to this interview. So let's take it right back, Kim. Would you like to tell us a bit about your background so that we can get to know you better? Because most of us know you of the Kim of today rather than way back.
Oh, let me tell you, Kim of way back then. Thank you. Thank you for such a lovely intro, Alison, as well. So I was actually born in the States, in Chicago, of all places, although I only stayed there till I was 4. And then we moved to Portugal, to Europe. My grandmother was a healer and a medium. And she really, from the age of 4, started teaching me how to put my hands on people, and how to heal, really. So, and it was normal and natural, I think, for me. It wasn't until, you know, much later when I got to school that my friend fell over and I tried to give her some healing, and was dubbed the witch. So, but it's a term I've really come to embrace. And so really, you know, I started very young doing energy work and communicating with divine beings and being taught about energy healing really from that place. So it was an amazing honor to have that so early. But of course, any of those gifts that we have so early on, I think we don't appreciate necessarily so much. And certainly later on, I went and trained as a hypnotherapist first. And then NLP practitioner and master health practitioner. And, you know, for me, I love helping people change. It's helping people out of pain and back into their light is one of the greatest privileges I think there is. Certainly for me anyway. I have 2 children as well, and a grandson who's 2.
Lovely.
And he's wonderful.
Lovely. You talk about being called a witch at that time, and I think sometimes people who are not aware of healing can conjure up all sorts of stories around spiritual healing, energy healing, and what it is. And you recently, with your latest newsletter from Healing in America, sent out a video that you prepared explaining healing. And I have to say, I think that is the best explanation I have ever seen. Well, and I think that it comes across as very professional and debunks the woo-woo-ness of it. Because you talk about energy and energy being around and how we've got things like radio waves around us and X-rays around us and all that sort of thing. And so, of course, we've got healing energy that we're conduits for as well. If you haven't seen this video, I strongly recommend you do watch it. And you can sign up for Healing in America newsletters through their website. But it's well worth a watch. And it's not a long video, but it literally is the best explanation that I have seen. And I think it's so helpful to the healing profession as a whole, because one of the challenges we have is getting the message across and not being ridiculed, but being taken seriously. So well done on that film.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we really start to think about these terms and you know, I see it more as fear. I see it more as people in fear that they're going to label something that they don't understand and have an opinion about it. And we can trace that back. I think it's still in our collective consciousness, although it is shifting big time. You know, that it wasn't that long ago we were being imprisoned or burned, or, you know, all of those awful things were happening. So, you know, that reality, there are still some people that are stuck in that, but thank goodness more and more science is now coming out, and more of us are feeling this call into healing and into our own spiritual journey, I think. And
I think the beautiful thing is that it can't do any harm. So, you know, people can be prescribed drugs, which can do a lot of good, but can also have side effects.
Exactly.
Whereas, you know, healing can't harm you, and sort of it can help you. So why wouldn't you want a bit of that?
Well, absolutely. And it's the oldest method of healing that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about your grandmother sort of teaching you about healing from a very early age. When did you first experience healing yourself? And tell us about that experience actually sort of on you.
On me? So I guess it was from my grandmother. She used to do healing. She also used to channel this incredible healing being whose name was Redwing. And that was really my first experience of feeling energy come through my body. And I was probably about 6. I mean, not very old at all. And then later, I you know, as a child, we kind of just accept these things. But I think as we go on, I experience deeper and deeper senses of the peace that's restored with spiritual healing.
Absolutely. How did you first hear about the Harry Edwards Healing Sanctuary and get lumbered with me thereafter?
Thank goodness. I thank my guides most days for that one, Alison. Actually, you know, my grandmother was the first one who really talked about Harry Edwards. She'd really he'd influenced her. And I think she'd even been to see him a few times while he was alive. And I think at the age of like 11 or 12, she gave me my first book to read, which was Harry Edwards' book about energy healing. So I heard about Harry Edwards years and years and years ago. The sanctuary was maybe about 10 years ago I heard about it. And thank goodness, I am so grateful. I feel like you really are a soul sister or something that we've connected. So that is so wonderful for me.
We did feel when we met, didn't we, that we knew each other. Both of us felt this connection. That we couldn't attribute to anything in this life, but that connection, I felt it, you felt it.
Yeah.
Was that your first visit to the sanctuary last year?
It was. And what a beautiful experience that was.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You just start driving up and you feel the sense of peace and harmony and just such a divine connection that's there.
I think as soon as you turn up that driveway, you do get that sense of peace. I still get it to this very day. There's just something, I think it's ley lines or something.
There's something very magical and very powerful about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide to become a healer yourself, and why?
That's a really good question. I think that I had always accepted being a healer. I don't think I ever really got a choice as to choose to step into being a healer or not. It was sort of a given in the script of my life, actually. I really stepped into it in my early 20s, where I really felt a call to connect more and really do much more healing and help other people. I think at that point, there was a real call from my heart to help others.
Who has inspired you most and why?
That's a really hard question. I mean, there are so many extraordinary people doing extraordinary work. Harry Edwards has obviously had a huge influence on me. My grandmother. Actually, my husband, Roger, he is one of these people that is the most amazing healer, and his tenacity and stubbornness to stay on the path to bring healing into the world and to help people see that, you know, we can all do it. And, you know, it isn't just some people that are special, we can all do it. And he's an amazing force for just constantly going at it no matter what.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
What sense of purpose or mission or duty guides you in your life?
That's a good question. Love. I feel strongly, and it's been coming through for some years now, more and more, that we as a humanity have to heal. And so, you know, it's about us healing and letting go of our pain and restoring our connection to our divine selves. And I feel that call more and more every day. So I think the more we can return to love and trusting each other again and loving and supporting one another, I think that's what drives me every day, is, you know, is helping people out of, I think as souls we go through an experience of having lessons and learning and certain things that we bring in or that our souls want to learn. And some of those lessons can be incredibly challenging, and we are incredibly scarred from them. And I think it's helping people release the trauma of those experiences so that they can really have the wisdom and the knowledge that they've gained from those experiences and return basically to love and harmony. And I think if we can all do that, this planet would change.
And I think also with the pandemic over the last couple of years, a lot of people have said this, and I tend to agree with it, there has been an energy shift.
Yes, big time.
So I think we're in a very unusual and extraordinary time where energy is changing and shifting, and we kind of, we can feel that on some days, and it feels slightly rough, you know, so you're being battered from side to side.
Oh, yes.
And you can't explain it.
I think it's got much more intense. In fact, sometimes it feels like, you know, you're crash landing on water, you kind of hit the ground, and then the next day you're up in the heavens and then back crashing down again. I think that's what's normal these days.
Yeah, and you think, what happened? Yes.
I know. I know. And of course, we're desperate to stay connected to those higher levels.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite book? And if so, why is it your favorite?
I think right now, and it has been for the past three or 4 years, is a book called Oneness. It's it's a channeled book by Rasha. And it really talks about these times of change that we're going through. And it's one of those books that for me, I don't know how many times I've read it or listened to it. It's a lot. And I'm not someone who usually I read a book and then I put it down and it's gone. But this one, it's multi-layered. So I hear new things even 4 years later that I never heard before. So I think that's got to be one of them. And of course, you know, the Harry Edwards healing books on healing that were such a guide for me in my life.
Yeah. Which spiritual principles steer your work?
Good question. I think love. And I think connecting back to our true nature, being the divine beings that we are. And we all are that. And those principles, you know, guide me every day. In fact, I'm always reading something spiritual or, you know, talking to somebody. I really do believe we're returning back to a place of love or coming into a place of love and empowerment, and that we need to listen to that wisdom that's in us.
Absolutely. How does healing work? And this is basically the explanation you've given on the video you've just but I think it's such a good explanation. The question was in there before I saw the video, but yeah, I think this is a really good one. So I'm sitting back and over to you.
Well, healing works in that we are energy. We are all energy, and we are all energy frequencies. When we go through experiences, sometimes those energy frequencies can be distorted from our true nature. And when we're in flow with that divine light and allowing that to flow through us, which is our natural gifts and our natural abilities, then, you know, the body restores itself.
As the healer, do you personally ever feel anything during the healing session?
Oh, yes.
What do you feel?
I feel all sorts of things. So sometimes I can feel blockages in people's energy. I feel a divine light come through. So for me, the minute I start to attune to do energy healing, my heart opens up. It's such a blissful feeling of love and connection. And so I feel love and I feel a warmth. My hands have always got incredibly warm when I do energy healing. Yeah. And so I feel that energy coming through, and I also feel the vibration or the resonance of the person that I'm working with. And I feel both, actually. I can feel their divine source, the divine nature of their being, and I can also feel the energy that's distorted or not necessarily in alignment. And so it helps me just in focusing on that alignment with people.
I always feel the heat in my hands. My hands always feel hot to me. And in a particularly powerful healing session, I get heat coming right down my arms and hands as well. for very powerful healing sessions.
Mm.
Does healing always work in your view, even if someone is terminally ill?
I think healing always works.
Mhm.
I think it doesn't always work in the way people want or expect it to. So even if somebody, and I think this for healers is, it's a really hard thing. And I've had a hard time with this one, certainly on my healing journey, is when people don't heal, when we're working with people, and of course our desire and intention is for them to get physically well, and they don't. But what you start to see is that they open up spiritually much more, and become much more peaceful. So I think healing always works, but our minds get hooked into results that we're wanting. And so it's important for us not to get attached to what happens in healing. I think that we are just that conduit, and the divine will be guided, source divine will knows exactly what to do and where to go and how that person needs help.
I quite often liken it to where we are positioned at the moment. We're only seeing part of the picture.
That's a beautiful explanation.
But people who are in spirit can see the full picture, and the full picture could be, this is part of somebody's learning experience and they've grown spiritually having gone through that experience, or it could be a whole host of things that we just don't know about yet.
Absolutely.
Our limited perspective here.
Yeah, exactly. That's so well put. And kind of letting go and allowing, I think sometimes that can be a block in people's energy if they're too attached to physical well-being rather than spiritual well-being.
Yeah, I have to say I still have a tendency to want that person to get well again. I still have.
Oh, so do I. The little healer ego, of course.
Yes. So, talking of that, do tell us about some of your healing successes.
Oh my goodness. Gosh, okay. I think there have been quite a few. One strikes me as working with a lady who had a hearing problem. She was deaf in one ear. And I do other work as well, so I don't just do pure hands-on healing. And this particular lady had had a very abusive father, and from a young age. So I think she was like 7 when she went deaf, and this lady was in her 50s when I worked with her. And we did some forgiveness process with her father, and obviously cleared some of that trauma, and then did energy healing, and her hearing came back. It was amazing. Really incredible, as well as working with a man that had cancer, bladder cancer, and he had some blockages and some pain and some anger that he had to release. But doing that along with the energy healing, he healed. It was really beautiful to see. Yeah.
I mean, how I see your work, Kim, sort of from the outside looking in, is you're not only just the sort of healer in terms of the spiritual or energy healing, but you kind of get in at a much earlier stage, working on dealing with emotions that can cause disease in the body in the first place. So if you can sort that out in the first place, you're less likely for that to follow through into illness.
That's really beautifully put. Yes. I think that when we start to clear emotional and mental programs and patterns, that it's much easier for the healing energy to get in and bring awareness, and it's easier to shift the energy. So once people have done it, I always think healing is body, mind, heart, emotions, and soul, of course. And when we can shift maybe some of those intense traumas that that people may have experienced, when we start to change those and we change the way people are perceiving it and the emotional attachments to that, and then do the energy healing, it's profound.
Absolutely.
Truly, it's profound.
What advice would you give anyone thinking of becoming a healer?
Do it. Just do it. You know, it's, I say this and and it is really the truth. It is incredibly humbling being a teacher and helping people learn how to do energy healing or healing of any kind. When I watch people go through that process, from when they begin their journey as a healer to when they qualify as a healer, they're transformed. They're a different person. And it's remarkable to see, and their lives are different. So, if there's any inkling of interest, I would say do it. If not, to help other people, to help yourself.
It's funny you should mention that, because I trained to be a healer through the Harry Edwards course. And, the teacher said to us, you won't be the same person when you finish the course as you are today. And I was a bit skeptical, to be honest. And I took that with a bit of pinch of salt at the time. But they were absolutely right. You do grow spiritually and you're not the same person. And my views on quite a few things have changed. And at the Sanctuary, we also have a follow-on course called Healer Know Thyself, which is run by one of our tutors, to take you further along that journey. And I'm absolutely loving the course and learning so much from it as well.
Brilliant.
Once somebody has become a healer and fully qualified, do you have any tips on how they can continue their progression as healers and become even better healers? Because it is a journey, isn't it? It's a bit.
It is a journey. It is a journey. And I would say, from most of my experience of training healers, is the biggest block that they come up against is usually themselves. Right. So I would say one of the most important things is get practice. Even if you're practicing on your pets or your friends and family, like the more you're doing that, the more you're attuning to allow to be a conduit of healing, the better. The more you open those channels, the more we meditate, the clearer our vibration becomes. The more, spending time with like-minded people, having that support, doing healing on yourself. I think there's a lot to that. So just sit there and, attune yourself to healing, and then bring those healing, be your own healer. I'd love to see healing coming into families, mums doing healing with their children, grandmothers doing healing. Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if, when your 2-year-old is going to sleep, that you could just channel energy?
Absolutely. Healing complementing the medical profession. How do you feel healing can complement the work of the medical profession, both for the patients and for the medics themselves?
I think it's a beautiful synergy. I really do. And it goes so well together, because, of course, energy healing, which I think is on your video, where that doctor talks about energy healing so well, is that they go in harmony with each other. So it isn't about an either or, it's about a combination, because energy healing can help with the side effects of healing, of medicine, right? So it can help counterbalance those side effects, as well as amplifying the healing effects that the medications do have, and igniting and stabilizing and balancing the person's own energy abilities, own healing abilities. So I think it kickstarts our bodies. I think that we're missing a trick, that we're not having healers at every doctor's surgery offering healing as well. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be absolutely wonderful. Have you got experience of healing in hospitals yourself?
I have a little bit of healing experience, and I laugh because I have a bit of a story about that as well over here, which I'll share with you. Well, Roger and I were fairly new over here, and we were keen to get healing going, and we worked really hard in the beginning, trying to make connections. So we made a connection with an oncologist, a doctor in Santa Barbara, and she wanted us to do these healing meditation circles, both for the patients and for the staff. So once a month we were doing this, and it was going really well, and people were benefiting. And you know, it was brilliant because she was actually doing energy healing with us. So for the patients to come and see their doctor actually doing energy healing and being part of that was just such a wonderful experience. But anyway, we didn't know that we hadn't been accepted by the full authorities there. And somebody was writing an article about us and reached out to the chairman of the hospital, who was very against healing, it turned out. So we turned up a few days after that to do our normal meditation and healing. And there was this big sign right at the front of the hospital. So as you walked in, you couldn't miss it. And it said, "There will be no healing in this hospital." And I wish we didn't have the cell phones, had the cameras on, but it was just so, I don't know. But anyway, so that, besides that experience, I have done a little bit of healing in hospitals.
Go on.
And for me, it requires more meditation in the beginning. It's a little hard because you're walking into an energy where there's fear, you know, there's suffering. So I think, you know, if you are going to do healing in a hospital, to be protected before you walk in is wonderful. But once you start, it's amazing how open people are, and actually other patients then want healing as well in the hospital, which is lovely.
Do you have any tips for healers who would like to get into hospitals to heal?
Unfortunately, not in America. I think it's probably easier in England. Although I have done some healing in hospitals over here, but it's usually requested by the patient. I would say over there, I'm sure there are lots of things that you can do. In England, it's much more open to connect with your local GP and, you know, let them know that you're a healer, give a talk, go into hospitals. I mean, one of the things that Roger and I were doing in Weston-super-Mare of all places was we would run a meditation and healing circle for the nurses. And that was so well received that I think, you know, nurses are crying out for it as well. If you want to really, you know, maybe offering meditations and healings to nurses, to doctors, to the medical profession, will help with that path. I mean, what do you think, Alison? I mean, it's a good question.
One of the things we're doing at the sanctuary that we're right at the early stages of, but it's gone incredibly well so far, is we're offering free one-day retreats for frontline medical practitioners. So far, we've had nurses, and we've had nurses from an intensive care unit of a local hospital. And, you know, I think to work in an intensive care unit in the first place, you need to be a nurse of a certain standard because of what you have to deal with. And for them to feel absolutely exhausted by the impact of COVID, I think says an awful lot for what our poor medical profession have been through over the last 2 years. So they've been coming to us for one-day retreat. And we have a planned day that includes a healing session for each of them, and also a gong bath. So they can really, really, you know, relax from both of those, and time to wander through our grounds, time to chat with each other, time to totally relax. They sort of come as a team. So quite often with the sister. And I think that is also very beneficial for them to talk about any bad stuff that may have happened in the confidence of their colleagues, not only in the confidence, but also knowing their colleagues will understand it in a way that somebody who doesn't work in the hospital might not fully appreciate. So they have been talking to their colleagues, and I've now got other departments contacting me, asking if they can come as well.
How wonderful. What a fabulous thing to do. That is amazing.
To get some doctors on board, but I think the way in is through the nurses, and sort of gradually build it as we go along. Because I think if the nurses can understand the impact that healing can have,
Mhm.
then that is a really good first start.
Absolutely, absolutely, because they offer the support to the doctors, don't they?
Yeah.
So it's funny how nurses will be the ones that come first.
Yeah.
Although, you know, we're starting to see a shift in even doctors being interested and talking about energy and things like that, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. But I
Yeah.
think the program sounds incredible. Well done.
Thank you. It's a team effort. It's a team effort, but it's certainly working.
Yeah.
I'd like to move now on to your two organisations, starting off with Healing in America. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about Healing in America, including the key services you offer.
Thank you. Well, Healing in America, we formed when we first moved over here to bring energy healing and training. We offer training in energy healing, so teaching people how to become practitioners of energy healing. And we run those courses online and in person. And we also have different trainers that run the programs in different places as well. And so we offer that. We offer training in how to form groups, and exactly like we were just talking about, Alison, where groups of people go in, you know, you go in, you have to a hospital, you run a meditation, you run a healing circle, and hands-on, and you know, it's a great opportunity for healers to get together and support different communities and things like that. But our main focus is on the energy healing and training, as well as offering obviously private sessions for energy healing, and education, really education about what is energy healing, how do we become better healers as well.
Yeah. And changes
Yeah.
happen. Tell us about that.
So Changes Happen is my little baby. That really I started in 2000. In fact, I started it when I moved here, but I just claimed the name Changes Happen. It's really, for me, about I work one-on-one with people predominantly, or I have done. There's a change happening for me in that going into more of training people. But one-to-one work where it's a combination of NLP, hypnotherapy, life coaching, and energy work. And sometimes the energy work is overt and sometimes the energy work is covert, depending on the client that I'm working with. And I also do meditations. So, you know, I record meditations and run workshops. My workshops tend to be about personal transformation and change. There was one that I ran for years called The Art of Joyful Living, which is really about helping people discover their life purpose, or now, as I prefer to call it, soul purpose. What do they incarnate with? What's the purpose of the soul's incarnation? What gifts do you bring? And, you know, how are you here to serve at this time? Because I think all of us are here to help with this transition right now. Some of us more consciously than others. So yeah, I'm just about to move into training people. So I'm designing a training program with, you know, hypnotherapy, NLP, energy work, meditation, consciousness development, to start teaching other people to do the work that I've been doing for, dare I say it, 30 years now.
No way.
Yeah. Yes, 30 years. It's a long time.
You're looking very well on 30 years, so it's clearly working. What you're
Well, I think Zoom helps.
I'd like to take things back a bit and just go through some explanations. Regarding NLP, what is it exactly and how does it work?
NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming. And neuro being the brain, linguistic being language and how we pattern things, the conversations we have with each other and ourselves, and programs being the programs that are installed, if you like. So So how it works is it doesn't work with the understanding, it works with how are we holding that in our minds, in our being. So we go through life and we have certain experiences. Traumatic experiences, of course, cause the deepest patterns, but we make all kinds of decisions and beliefs and programs that start to happen. And NLP really gets away from the story and much more into the structure of how somebody is holding that problem in a specific way. As well as it started in the early 70s. And instead of studying the illness model, people that had phobias, how they were doing with their phobias, they started to look at, well, who's overcome them and how did they do that? As well as modeling the top therapists that were around at the time, like Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson, and just breaking it down into patterns and processes that help people change no matter who they are or where they are, because it shifts the way your subconscious mind is producing a certain pattern, if that makes sense.
So it's about more focusing on the solution rather than the problem, acknowledging the problem.
It's changing the way the problem is structured.
Yeah.
So sometimes that could be seeing it in a different perspective. Sometimes that could be changing a belief that you're running. So a common one amongst healers is I'm not good enough, or I'm not qualified enough, or I'm not a good enough healer. And so it's getting into those and changing those beliefs so that you can actually do what you're here to do.
Yeah. And how does hypnotherapy work?
Hypnotherapy works. Well, we all go into a state of hypnosis anyway. You know what daydreaming is? Yeah. That's a state of hypnosis, right? Or we've had those experiences where we're driving in our car somewhere and we get to where we were going and we don't remember our car journey. That's a state of hypnosis. So hypnosis is a naturally occurring state. When we are in a state of hypnosis, we have access to the subconscious mind. So if we look at the mind as like an iceberg, the conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg. Now, this is where we try to create change and we find it really hard and we decide, no, it's impossible to change because we're just in the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is where all of those programs, all of those patterns, all of your beliefs, all of your emotions, all of that is stored within the subconscious. So when we do hypnotherapy, we're bypassing the conscious mind and going directly to the subconscious where the issue is, and helping people to change it or to help them access their own ability to create healing themselves. Because I do believe everybody has the answers inside of them. They just don't quite know how to get there.
Yeah. The phrase from surviving to thriving, what are your top tips to achieve that?
That's a big question. I think, first of all, survival kind of indicates that there's an element of fear to it. And I would say, firstly, heal the fear. And learn to create a relationship with yourself. In that, some of those things, in fact, I would even probably go as far to say as most of the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself or the limiting programs that you run or that we all run aren't true. And it's really about coming back to your true nature and what feels right for you. Gone are the days where we follow other people or we want to get advice from other people, because within us, we have the answers and we also have the guidance. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we go to somebody else and we say, what should I do? So thriving is actually us being able to listen to our own wisdom, to listen to our souls, and to be able to move forward with the life that we intended to come in with.
And how can our emotions help us?
Oh, this is a great one. So our emotions are our guidance system, really. I think we've had a tendency to label different emotions and to say, this emotion is good and this emotion is bad. But when we look, and I think the reason for that is we have experiences that will have us stuck in certain emotional states. So, somebody who's experienced trauma might be left with anxiety. So, first of all, it's really about healing those. And then when we listen to our emotions, when we can actually go into it and feel them, number one is feel them in your body. And here's the key, I think, is we have a tendency to have an emotion and then we go into the emotion, but the brain starts going and we start justifying, or we're angry with somebody, so we start making up a story about that, and it grows. So we're not actually present with the feeling, we're present with the thoughts. And when we go into the emotion and really are present there, the emotions dissipate. So once that discomfort starts to dissipate, we can start to ask, what are you trying to let me know? So where do you feel the emotion in your body? Let's say it's in the solar plexus or in the heart. You put your hand there and you thank it. So instead of trying to get rid of it, you thank it and you ask, what are you trying to let me know right now? What do I need to know? And usually it will give you the answer. And once that message has been delivered, they go.
I think that's very powerful, because I think, in our society that there's a kind of push to bury your emotions. And I think there's that pressure, particularly for men. Women can get away with being a bit emotional sometimes, but men in particular have almost been taught not to show emotion. I think that causes an awful lot of problems.
I agree. A huge amount of problems. It shuts you off from your heart. It shuts you off from your flow of energy. A lot. In fact, I don't know what it's like there, but over here, that's certainly changing. We're seeing many more men going through healing, and actually their hearts start opening. But when we're cutting off our emotions, it's like we're cutting off our main navigational system. Really, between the emotions and our third eyes and being able to get those inspirational thoughts or inspirational awarenesses. But start listening, start asking questions. I'll just give you a quick example. So something like anger is an emotion that we think, especially as women, we shouldn't have. Right? We shouldn't be angry about anything. So we have a tendency to shut it down and push it down. That causes an imbalance in the solar plexus and in the heart chakra. Now, the message of anger, if we listen to it, anger is about boundaries. Anger is about us saying, where do I need to say no in my life? Right? And fear is another one that I don't know about over there, but over here, fear and anxiety and things like that have really risen since COVID. And fear is about healthy caution. It's about, how do I do something and feel safe? So it isn't that you want to get rid of it. You want to ask, how do I move forward in this? Or how can I do this thing and be safe? Because safety is one of our primary, functions. Our body wants us to survive here.
It's about using our inbuilt sat nav, really, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's a lot less confusing than Waze can be.
If somebody has depression, what are your tips for healing that depression?
Yeah, depression is really about grief. In my mind, it's certainly from my experience of working with people. Depression is about grief. It's about, where are you grieving? And, we tend to think of depression we tend to think about grief as being a person that we've lost. But actually, we're grieving all the time. We grieve our lives not turning out the way we want them. We grieve certain things happening that we didn't want to happen, or certain things not happening that we wanted to happen. It's really about, how can I let go? So honoring the feelings of depression. And it's also an opportunity to really get in touch with yourself and hear what the messages are. So if you do suffer from depression, start asking yourself a question: what do I need to let go of? Where do I need to just let go of something? What am I letting go of? And once that starts to happen, it's very similar to the emotions, is we let go of those expectations that we might have about how life should be and how life should work out. And we open up to our soul's guidance, our soul's messages, our soul's wisdom, really.
My father passed over when I was quite young, and I can remember going to my GP at the time because I was feeling very down, and I sort of thought, oh my goodness, this isn't normal, this isn't me. And his response literally changed my life. And his response was, you are grieving.
Yeah.
And what you are going through, what you are feeling is 100% normal.
Yeah.
What you're doing is normal.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to prescribe anything for you, not that I was after that, but you go forth and you be miserable, because you are processing what has happened, and that is the healthy way to do it. And he said, if you'd come to me and said you're not feeling anything at all, then I'd have been worried about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so beautifully put, because it normalizes it. It is normal for us as human beings to have emotions. We all have them. And especially if you're a healer, you'll feel them more intensely.
Yeah, I think there's this pressure to be happy all the time, but actually something has happened to you. You do need healing time to process it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And nature can be an amazing healer with that as well. Nature, letting yourself cry, really allowing yourself to go fully into it.
Absolutely.
Go through it and out.
And out the other end. Linguistic patterns, what do we need to be careful of?
A lot.
Now then.
Just be careful. No. So, our words create our reality, the reality we are experiencing inside of ourselves, and, the reality outside. Words are huge. And in fact, don't we have a talk coming up next month about the language of disease and things? So we want to make sure our language is in a positive frame, that we're not repeating constantly what we don't want in our lives. I'll give you an example of this. So I want you right now to not think about an elephant in the room. Like, just don't think about it. And everybody will have some kind of elephant in the room and will know which way it's facing, because that's the nature of our minds. So when we're saying what we don't want continuously, or we're complaining, that's the energy we're putting out into the world. When we start to ask for what we want and use positive language and talk about healing, and talk about diseases being a process and not a sentence. I think cancer is one of those that we use the word as though it's a sentence, but it isn't. And I prefer to add ing onto it and make it cancering, right? Because you think about that when you're talking to someone, when we do that, it becomes a process rather than something that's static. And so we want to be careful about, is our language positive? Are we stating what we want and not what we don't want? Are we repeating certain language patterns over and over again? One that I heard about was a friend of mine, and she was a nurse in hospitals, and she would hear this man came in. He was really lovely, and everybody, all the staff loved him. But his expression was, "It breaks your heart, doesn't it?" So he would see a little girl and go, oh, breaks your heart, doesn't it? He was so touched by how sweet she was, or something else. And he'd say, oh, breaks your heart. The man was in because he was having heart attacks. It was like the third time he'd been in there. So we really want to be mindful of what kind of language are we using. And there's a whole model that when we do our talk, I really want to bring that in. What is the language of disease, and how do we help our clients or our patients use more positive language so that their focus is on their capability and identity to heal rather than sickness.
Yeah. Forgiveness, what's that all about, and what tips do you have for the healing forgiveness?
Forgiveness is one of my favorite things because it is so powerful. I have seen so many people change their lives just by forgiving. And, you know, I think we have a tendency to think about forgiveness as being something, some way of saying, oh, okay, I'll forgive you. And in that, we've got an attachment still to being right, or an attachment still to being wounded. And we're actually doing any kind of forgiveness you do is for you. It's yours. And I have a particular process that I love that Tim Holbaum created. And it is this whole process where you go through and it's like distant healing. We give the person what they needed to behave differently. If we can see it as those places where people are just unconscious, or they don't have the resources or the attributes that they need to behave differently, we give them that. And when we give them that, it's distant healing. And then we disconnect, we unattach the energetic imprints that have been so connected to us because they're in our auric field. So those vibrations that are in our field will continually attract likewise vibrations. So you might find that if you have something in your life, a theme where you haven't brought forgiveness in, you will meet people that you will need to forgive over and over again. And it's really for your own benefit, although it doesn't feel like it. And the benefit really is so that you can release those energies and fill yourself with the fullness of you, coming back to your center. I believe forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools that we have in our own liberation and our own freedom.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'd agree with you. On your website, you talk about holding space for another person, visualizing someone a certain way and watching them step into their potential, creating thought and the right energy for the relationship. Would you talk us through that, please, and expand on how we can heal our relationships with others and indeed ourselves through this process?
Such wonderful questions, Alison. Holding space, again, is really about our consciousness. Thoughts are living things. We know the science behind this now. We know that if we focus on something in a particular way, it changes how it shows up. And the process that I found came from a book called Mindful Loving, which was written by this psychologist. And he heard about quantum physics and the whole field and our thoughts being living things. And he was like, I want to experiment. And so he did. He experimented with his wife of 20 odd years. And so he would think about all of the amazing things that she did and who she was and the things he loved about her and how he felt about her when they first met. And he said on those days, he would come home and they would have these romantic, amazing evenings and deep connections. So it worked. And then, of course, he had to try the opposite, which was think about all the things that annoyed him about her. And on those days, he would come home. She would either find a reason to pick a fight or she wouldn't be anywhere. So I read this and I went, does this work? Like, does this really work? And my clients are amazing. They are always up for experimenting with me. And so we started just holding space. So really the principle behind it is, again, like the forgiveness process, it's what does that other person need to behave differently, right? So at the time for me as well, my girls were teenagers. So it was such a gift and such an amazing opportunity to practice. And with one daughter, she could hold a bad mood for days, like a couple of days. I'm not joking. She was an expert at it, slamming doors, things like that. And it wasn't like her at all. It was just this teenager that suddenly came out one day. And so I started to just imagine her as she normally is, as her true nature, which is this happy, bubbly, fun girl. And the minute I started to do that, it took a little while. I think the first time I did it, it took about half an hour. And we were driving to LA, just her and I. She didn't want to go. So she was playing her angry music and not speaking to me. And so I just kept doing it. I just kept visualizing and visualizing and visualizing. And within half an hour, 20 minutes, she took her headphones out. She put on music that we both liked listening to. And then she turned to me and started chatting and making jokes.
Wow.
So I can't quite believe this is happening. So then I was getting, one of my clients at the time had a husband who could be verbally loud, especially when out. He was in the hotel industry. And so if his service wasn't perfect, he lost his mind. And she was this really like lovely, sweet woman. And so she experimented and started holding space for his true nature. And he never went into another one again. Like she could see him starting to go and she started to hold it. So really, I think there's two levels to it. I think one level is, who is the person that you're with? Who is that person? Right? If you know them well, what is it that they need? What are their good sides? What are the things you can love about them and appreciate about them? And focus on those things, no matter what they're doing. And that's really important. They could be doing whatever triggers you or pushes your button or whatever you don't like about it, but you have to stay focused on the positive. And it's so fascinating because you see almost like this twirling of the eyes as they kind of settle into and come into that space. The second part of it is when we're working with people, and I think this is important as healers, that when we're working with people, that we see their divinity. You know, we see them as healed and whole. And I think if we focus on that while we're doing the healing, I've certainly noticed that healing happens more quickly and more easily. There's less resistance, and people do. You know, I even do it on workshops, holding space for people. It's amazing the transformation that can happen when we start holding people in our hearts and in our minds differently.
Where you're holding space for someone, have you ever had anyone feel that and question what's going on?
No, not that, no, not all that they haven't dared to. I've had people I've never met. One lady I was working with, her son was an addict. And he was in his 30s, didn't believe he was an addict, didn't believe he had a problem. And I saw that everywhere in his life, everybody was holding space for him in a negative way as being an addict, right? As being a drug addict and an alcoholic. His friends were that. Society had arrested him a few times, his parents, his family. So everybody was focused on him being this problem and this addict. And I said to her, let's just do this experiment, shall we? Let's see what happens. It can't do any harm. So I said to her, what would he look like if he was clean and sober? It took a little while to get there. It had been a long time. But eventually she did. And so we had started to hold space. And within 10 days, this guy booked himself into rehab. It was extraordinary. So we can do it with people we don't even know.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We're getting into our final furlong now. What easy steps can we take to accomplishing any goal, would you say?
I would say, first of all, be clear on what the goal is. What do you want, as opposed to what you don't want? So state it in the positive, and then see it, visualize it, see it in the future. Begin to work your way back from there, right? So that you see it as complete and then plan accordingly. I find it that if people can set easy goals, like if you can break it down and make it easy so that it's more like riding a bicycle. When we're riding a bicycle, we're making a small series of adjustments. It's more like that rather than the huge changes, because the huge changes can have equal and opposite imbalances, right? So start with the vision, be really clear on what you're wanting, be clear that it's stated in the positive, be clear that you do really want it, and what are the steps to achieving it. Break it down.
Brilliant advice there. What do you feel is the future for spiritual healing?
I think the future is good. I actually see that part of these changes that we're going through, part of this shift in consciousness, energy healing is going to be much more needed than ever before. I think it's one of the best tools that we have for healing and aligning ourselves back to our divine beings, or back to our spirits, our spiritual nature. And I think more and more we're going to find that medicine alone will not work, that we are going to be faced with a lot of these issues are more of an energetic nature. And certainly with any issue, there is an energetic nature to it. And with spiritual healing, I think we can solve those so quickly and create peace and harmony. So I think there's never been a better time to be a healer, and there's never been more demand for healing.
And do you have an inspiring quote you can share with us?
My favorite quote is actually our deepest fear. Let me just find it. It's Marianne Williamson.
Oh, I love her work.
Yeah. I thought it was, let me just pull it up. Sorry, just take a minute.
Is that something along the lines of, is our deepest fear is
Yeah.
we're not good enough?
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about you shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it isn't just in some of us, it is in all of us. As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
That is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love that. And I think also, quite often where we want help, we will pray for help, solution to a particular problem or whatever. But I think also there's an element that if we all step up into our true power, into our true gifts at full volume, sometimes we ourselves can be the answer to somebody else's prayer, even though that might not be our intention, but because we're bringing a certain gift set to the table, that can help another person.
Absolutely. Always. Even if, people come into our lives and it isn't the best interaction, there's still a gift in it. And I would say the other thing as healers, to be more awake and alert about what's actually happening around you, paying attention to nature. Like I'll have, when I'm working with people in this room here, it's got a big window that overlooks kind of a valley, and hawks will often fly by or come right up to the window almost, or different birds as different messages. So I think we're constantly being communicated with, and part of it is actually paying attention to that. And as we do pay attention to those signs and messages, we're guided in extraordinary ways, and we're more attuned to be able to hear that guidance and be able to trust it and listen to it.
And I think as healers as well, from the healing perspective, sometimes the challenging words or behavior of somebody else is actually a symptom of the illness.
Yeah.
Or a byproduct of a medication they're on that's causing them to act a certain way. And that is a sign of something deeper that needs to be healed, rather than taking offense at whatever it is they're doing.
That's a really good point. And I also think in that it's an opportunity for us. How do I get triggered if somebody else is like that towards me? How can I open my heart and keep my heart open no matter how the world outside us behaves? I had we had a neighbor in an old house that we lived in who did have a mental illness. And one day I came out of my house and she was out in the garden moving some logs and twigs that we'd cut from some branches. And I said hello to her and asked her what she was doing. She raged over to me and literally came into my face and started screaming obscenities. Now, normally my reaction would have been absolute fear and panic, but for some reason, I just opened my heart and just felt love. It was the weirdest thing. In that moment, she could no longer hold the rage that she was coming at me with. And she went. I never, ever had an issue with her again after that. So I think those can be opportunities for how can I open my heart? How can I practice forgiveness? How can I be the embodiment of what I want to be?
Yeah. Perfect. Finally, how can people become more involved with Healing in America and changes happen, and also sign up for this exciting new program you're going to start?
Thank you. So getting on our mailing lists is the best way. We send regular newsletters out and updates about what's happening. So either going to healinginamerica.com and signing up for the mailing list there, or going to changeshappen.com and register there for the newsletter. Within the next week or so, the first part of the program I'm going to be running is self-healing. So it's a 6-week program that is going to be energy healing, spiritual principles, NLP, like how we change, self-hypnosis, like how do we really get in here and create a harmonious place for us to live as healers and more spirituality. So that's the first segment. And then the second, which is, you have to do that if you're going to do the further training with me anyway. And then the other class will show up. So sign up, there'll be wait lists, there'll be everything happening. So if you sign up, you'll find out about it.
Wonderful. Well, that brings us to the end of this In Conversation. Kim, thank you so much for doing this for us. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you over the past hour or so, and I think we've had a lot of fun along the way as well, but also learnt an awful lot too. And you know, I love you've got so much that you bring to the table in wisdom and top tips for how we can live more authentically. That it's been a real treat talking to you this evening. So we'll stop the recording in a minute and say goodbye to anybody who's watching this on catch up. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, whether you're in the Zoom room or watching this on catch up, and goodbye from both of us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.